the expectations for free music create havoc on the festival vibes, and the performers fear for their safety. Joni Mitchell at one point stops playing and starts crying because people aren't listening. She knows that it is over. The 60s are over. The dream is over. Other performers are canceling because it's being deemed not cool to play, and some are worried about their safety. Another documentary from the late 60s for a small festival called Folk Celebration Festival in Big Sur took place at Esalen, a rich hippie spa for developing self-awareness through the body. This was all post-Woodstock. It was a successful mix of rock, folk, and soul, with the audience on one side of the swimming pool and performers on the other. During Crosby, Stills, and Nash, someone from the audience gets up and goes over to their side and starts ranting about their fur coats and how they're sellouts. There's an altercation. Stills tries to calm the guy down and ends up getting into a scuffle. And then he uses the situation as a lesson and an intro into the next song. He says, how can we all fall into that trap of money? Is he a leader? People are looking to them to calm the situation and make it back to where it was. The trap, the trappings. Which side are you on, brother? The 70s became the era that learned how to exploit the youth culture. Corporate rock is born. But by 1977, the Clash have written a song with the lyrics, no Elvis, Beatles, Rolling Stones. Iggy Pop and the Stooges are often cited as the beginning of punk rock. Under the beatific 60s was Detroit, the Stooges. Iggy Pop wore disruption into what was supposed to be entertainment and positive vibes. Iggy walking out into the audience, breaking glass, smearing peanut butter on himself. Was this a stage show? Was this rock music or real life? His estrangement of the audience's expectations created something new. He gave people something they had never seen. We're gonna have a real good time tonight, almost forcing it down the throats for the audience. 1969, okay, all across the USA. Was it? Turning them into a violent frenzy of fun, in capital letters. The F word Iggy style, deconstructing the idea of what entertainment is. What is a star? Suspended adulthood? A place beyond good and evil? Someone who you want to believe in him or herself? A daredevil, a risk taker, going to the edge and not falling off for you? There were others, of course. The Velvet Underground, the Doors. Hey, they were all risk takers at one moment in the 60s, when no one knew where any of it was all going. And before them, the Beats, and before them, the avant-garde artists, Futurists, Fluxus, and before them, etc., etc. Rock and roll taken from the black man's blues, outsider music, a mourning for what's expected, an escape. But it's never going to happen, so we dance and play and forget for a moment that we're all existentially alone. Get me out of the 9 to 5 and onto le weekend. This is not an essay. This is a poem, not a poem, an incantation, a lament for something other. Cut to PIL performing at the Ritz, New York City, 1981. The Sex Pistols are over. Sid Vicious is dead. Public Image Limited has made an impact. Their third record, Flowers of Romance, is a mystery. There's a girl on the cover. There are 3 of them. They're finally here. The crowd anxiously awaits them. The huge screen where videos are projected before the bands play is still down. There's a strange film projected on it of a girl getting out of a garbage can. It's in a dark alley. I'm excited because it looks like they made a special film for New York City. The film stops, but the screen doesn't come up. The band is on stage. Their shadows are seen behind the screen. They start playing, but they don't pull the screen up. The audience becomes infuriated because they can't see the band. People are yelling and starting to throw metal chairs, which have been placed in rows on the floor, as if it's a theater. The band runs off the stage, and the audience proceeds to destroy the huge screen. Our expectations have been crashed. For whatever reason, PIL screwed with our heads, deliberately. Something new. We were there because they were a myth. They were always building mythology. We were there because of their audacity, but then couldn't accept what they were offering. It was too much. That experience will never be seen on YouTube or be downloaded. You can't even see a picture of it because the internet didn't exist and no one was paying attention. No one was documenting, except a zine by these 15-year-old girls in New York called The Decline of Western Civilization. They did an interview with the band. For this reason, the 80s are the new 60s, or rather, it is now all part of the same pre-internet life. The nostalgia for pre-internet before 1993 is pervasive. What was it like to be wandering around, unknowing, scrounging for bits of information? But is what we get out of a performance any different now than it was then? A transcendence or just a distraction from daily life? Humdrum pain, humdrum boredom, humdrum aloneness. A nice transition that doesn't end. A day at the beach, a trip to the mountains. Maybe that's all it ever was. An unending kiss leading to nowhere bad. Or somewhere that you never dreamed of. What I want to feel when I go see someone play, something fall apart until it becomes something else. This too is romanticized. I saw Dave Chappelle perform at the Oddball Festival in Hartford on his comeback. No one had ever put together a traveling all-comedy festival involving stand-up comics. Live Nation put it on, Funny or Die promoted it. It was in this arena that had a reputation for actually having kind of bad shows. This was the fourth on the tour. Demetri Martin, Flight of the Conchords, performing before Chappelle, all seemed to express in different ways a bit of a hard time with the audience. People coming in and out, talking, but they handled it with humor. I could sense that it was one of those arenas where the acoustics are such that you can hear somebody who's talking like 50 feet out in the audience. There's nothing a stand-up comedian hates more than people talking during their time and space. They're the most vulnerable of performers, using their personality, not actors doing a skit. They like to control the situation, own the space and time they have. If they lose the audience, they want to try and win them back. When Dave Chappelle came out to glorious, much anticipated applause, it was a great moment. I was practically tearing up. After about 10 minutes, Chappelle started asking people to stop talking and let him do his act. They continued and stepped up their banter, yelling things out to him. There were people in the audience that were annoyed by him and his response, and then there were people who were yelling at those people. He took out his pack of cigarettes and said he was patient and could wait out his contractual 25 minutes on stage, which he did, staying even a bit longer, continuing to talk to the audience. They just got messier He hung in there looking somehow for a way back, staying longer than 25 minutes. Finally walking off after saying goodnight. The next night in Pittsburgh, I heard he killed it. The sound on stage can determine how one feels connected to the audience. As a performer, I've certainly been there. The biggest nightmare was probably when we played Neil Young's Bridge concert for the first time in the early 90s. It was supposed to be totally acoustic. We'd never played an acoustic show before. I brought a guitar especially to smash, as I had a feeling things were doomed to fail. At soundcheck, we could hear our guitars, which were just mic'd, no pickups going into any amps. But when we went out to play, we heard nothing. For us, a group that relies on the interplay of the guitars, it was a nightmare. We knew also that we truly were playing before a mainstream rock audience. When we attempted to cover a version of Personality Crisis, it got halfway through and then I yelled the F word into the mic and smashed the awaiting acoustic. Then Willie Nelson came out and did a medley of his songs, followed by Don Henley with a full electric band. So much for rules. I felt terrible that I had yelled out the F word. As we walked off stage, I saw the row of kids with their wheelchairs sitting at the back of the stage. I had forgotten about them being there. Later, Ben, Neil's son, came up to me in his wheelchair and said, "Everyone has a bad day sometime." That's it. Is this a question? Comment and questions? Time? Anyone have a comment or question? It can be about anything, it doesn't have to be about what I just read.
I got one.
Yes?
I'm wondering if Bodyhead will ever perform in Colorado soon. Please.
We'd like to. It just depends if someone asks us. And Bill, unfortunately, doesn't like to fly, so he has to do a lot of driving.
Okay.
Bill, Bodyhead is for those who don't know, it's a improv duo that I have with Bill Nace, who's done a lot of solo work and played with other musicians in the sort of experimental, eccentric music world. Yes?
What pushes you to move from one art form into the next?
I don't know. I guess I'm kind of a restless. To me, it's all different kinds of expression, and I was pretty much brought up to do visual art, or I always wanted to practice visual art, and went to art school, and so I just really fell into, like a lot of people, punk rock. Just kind of, it happened, and then suddenly you're playing in a band. Although for me, it was, post-punk fallout. But it's kind of like, well, if I have an idea for this, I'm gonna, writing or something. I try to keep writing as a constant, because I figure a lot of times I'll use it as a basis for starting it, like an art show or something. But then I kind of, if I get stuck there, I'll go like to my studio and I'll try and work on some art. But it really depends on like what also, if I have a show or some deadline. It's just different forms of expression. Yes?
And to kind of build off of that, because you've you've worked in so many different artistic fields. Have you ever had it, or do you still have it when you pivot to a different field? Do you have a sense of like imposter syndrome of some sort? Like,
oh yeah,
yeah.
I have that's a constant through every field.
And I suppose just what do you do that helps you work through that, or helps you just get beyond that sense of like lack of belonging or whatever?
Well, the only thing that really gets through is the actual action of doing something, or just being the minute of working, and yeah, that's the only thing that really, and I try not to think about it too much.
Yeah.
It's a real creativity killer.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're an iconic rock star image, and I don't mean to say image because you're a person, but how is it to be so influential in these political times as a woman rock star with your history? Do you have advice?
Well, I mean, I don't really think about it, being so influential. Because, well, one, I just feel like most millennials they're young, and who knows what they know, And I'm like, it's amazing what people do find on the internet or find out about, and that's what's great about the internet. But I don't know, I think it's really difficult to step in politically. Like, I always feel like, oh, am I one of those people who's now gonna like make a statement about some tragedy that's happened? I mean, I just feel weird about it, like, or, I mean, I don't mind, bringing attention to, where people can donate money or for different things, but like, social media is so vicious. I'm pretty thin-skinned. People are so reactionary on Twitter, and so mostly I don't, not that involved with it, but I do feel sometimes like I should be more responsible, because I have to remind myself that people do listen to what I say, which is, I find strange. Yes.
So, from your personal experiences, how would you say, what tips would you say to be a successful woman in punk rock?
Why do you want to be a successful woman in punk rock? I mean, to me, I don't even know what that means. To me, punk rock was not about being successful at all, actually. It started out as something that was a platform against things that were status quo and mainstream. But more specifically, like corporate rock, but it was also kind of a little bit like, it was definitely meant something different in England than it did here. Here it kind of came more out of the poetry world and the kind of tradition of avant-gardism in New York, the beats, but it did still have like this kind of almost. Well, you look at Malcolm McLaren, who was kind of a hippie, and he was influenced by the Situationists, in France, and I know that his what he talked about, his influence over the Sex Pistols and everything that's kind of like, he has his version and they have their version, but obviously there was something in the air. But the funny thing is how hippies and punks supposedly hated each other. And it was kind of like one, alternative generation taking down another alternative generation. It was kind of funny. But I don't know what I don't even know what do you what do you want to be a musician? Basically, I mean, I think that if you feel like you make something that you feel in your gut makes a difference to you, like it kind of, I don't know, like it takes you to another place, then I think that's a sign of success. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I played bass in a band with my husband, and I just experienced things like being denied credentials for girlfriends, and they called me bluff, and I told me, and I said, what am I going to date? What experience you on that, and like, what are some stories, that kind of stuff?
I don't know. I mean, bass is easy. Anyway, but I also, I mean, now I mostly just play guitar, but I started out playing guitar with these two girls, and someone showed me how I could make like, half chords, big half chords. It was kind of like jazz in a way. And I never really properly learned how to play the bass or the guitar, and it was part of my, I never aspired to be a bass player, actually, or even a musician. It was kind of, this is what I'm doing now. It was more like I could have, if I felt like the most exciting things in New York were happening in the dance world, maybe I would have ended up doing that or something. But I saw these no-wave bands, and that was really interesting, and it was very free, and kind of, most of them were artists, and I'd never heard anything like it. It was totally different, and so I kind of fell into it. It wasn't, but I never wanted to be like an accomplished musician. It wasn't, it was more about expression and how we worked as a band and that sort of thing. But I definitely felt, there were times, like even now I won't go into like a big music store because I feel like I just don't like the attitude of the guys that work there for the most part. Yes?
When you collaborated with hip-hop artists, was it kind of more of an organic, because of your geographical location in New York City with the hip-hop artists there, or was it the record company kind of bringing people together?
Are you talking about that compilation?
No, like with the
Oh, well, when we asked Chuck D to sing on Cool Thing, we were recording in the same studio actually, so we saw them every day, and Chuck would just always be there waiting for Flavor Flav, like going on day 2 or something, and eventually you'd hear these big footsteps, this giant like shoes, sneakers he wore, coming down the stairs.
So it was kind of organic, like.
Yeah, it was super organic, and it was funny though because and people would always at the time, they would compare our music a little bit. Like our engineer had never done a guitar record before. He'd only worked on hip hop, but we thought, well, that's really dense. Public Enemy's music's really dense, so he can figure it out. And but we asked Chuck, and then he ended up saying like the most cliched thing, but it actually worked fine, Initially, it was a little disappointing. Yes?
Did your parents support your career?
My parents were pretty supportive of anything that was vaguely creative, I guess. I think they were disappointed when I started playing music initially, because that I wasn't doing art, or I started writing some articles in art form, and they liked that. But they were, then when they see that you're traveling and you're, doing all this stuff, they were, more accepting. But they never voiced any negative feelings towards it. Yes?
What do you do when you find yourself in an artistic rut?
Artistic rut. Well, I switch mediums. But no, but I think, no, I think that, you know, what people say is you know, if you don't know what to write, you should still keep writing, even though, and just be there for when it comes to you, the inspiration. But I don't know, I do that, I try that sometimes, just to force myself to write something, or I'll like go out and drive around in my car and I'll look at signs, or like I'll just, you know, look for things that I think could be interesting to write about, or I don't know, just like, oh, that's a weird juxtaposition of like I don't know, like you know, like those breezy things that they use, like, it's funny because I always thought, oh, that'd be cool to do an art piece with, and then this artist I know did something with them. But you know, I mean, you can, so it's like a fine line between, you know, you still, if you come up with a good idea, you kind of still have to make it your own, and somehow bring it into your own context. And but I don't know, I just yeah, the one thinking is that you stick with it and you know, it'll come. But the other thinking is maybe try a different tactic. Yes.
What artists have you been liking lately? Or been listening to?
Oh, you mean visual artist or? Well, I like Seth Price's work a lot. He's a visual artist. Music, I like Steve Gunn, actually. And God, I can never, whenever people ask me this. Oh, I like Cardi B. I like that her one song is really good. It's kind of infectious. Yes. I mean, I had a line a long time ago in the 90s called X-Girl, and this friend of mine and I, it was kind of streetwear, like t-shirts and simple clothes, skirts, and it was more about the logos. This guy, Mike Mills, who now is like a kind of well-known director, but he was a really talented graphic artist, and he did really great. You know, we told him what we're looking for, and he did really great logos and designs, and we never really thought of ourselves as designers. It was kind of, I don't know. We would find things in thrift stores and try and remake them, like the right kind of t-shirt, and then nothing would come out right. It was very frustrating. And since then, I've just done a couple capsule collections with people, like small, and most recently with this line called Other Stories it's owned by H&M. But it's a very small kind of boutique line, and I just did graphics for them for t-shirts and hoodies. And
Yes, Mom. Do you have kids?
yeah, I have a daughter who's 23.
How do you encourage creativity in these days?
Well, I mean, she went to a school that was very learn by doing, so it definitely just fostered. I just tried not to kill creativity. Like, I actually didn't really want to do that much art around her, because I didn't want that to feel like a shadow. You know, I didn't want her to be in the shadow of, like, you know, because I'm known more as a musician, so. But I don't know, it's weird. It's weird to see your kids grow up and become adults, because they just surprise you in so many ways. Like, she's just been writing. She's a painter, but she started writing poetry recently, and they're really good. Yes. If I do, it'll be really small. It'll be like a fiction, a novella, or no, noveletta. I'm running something, but it's so far just the basis for the show I'm doing in March, our show. Yes? Yeah.
Yeah, do you think you're going to do another Free Kid album?
No plans to. I'm working on another Body Head record and probably going to do a solo record. So. Yes.
Okay, so yeah, I just read your book this week, so I'm like so in it, like right now, so it's cool to see you now. But I guess there's so many questions. The biggest one would be, I feel like even though maybe you kind of fell into success with like one of the mediums, it seems to me like you were always really proactive about trying new things and about picking up new instruments and about being out in the scene, not in the house necessarily. And is that something that you have always been like conscious about and like proactive about, and like did you have to like pep talk yourself into these things, or is that natural for you?
Well, yeah. I mean, I did grow up thinking I would just be an artist. I mean, I even thought about getting married or having kids or anything. So it's a priority. It's just kind of how I identify myself, and yeah, that's all.
One side question. You mentioned, I Googled some stuff, and there, I guess like that one line that you said about Lana Del Rey became like this huge thing, of course, right? But what, and someone kind of asked, but what female artists today do you feel like do represent like a modern feminist well?
A modern what?
Like a feminist.
Um.
Yes. For lack of a better term.
Oh, I don't know.
Like in music, and you talk about.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, Kathleen Hanna still makes records, I guess. Like, when I think of like the most kind of overt feminist music. I mean, I know that Beyonce gets props from her last record. I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about it. I mean, when it comes down to it to me, the music, I have to like the music also. It's not just about, I don't know. I like that video. There's a couple of songs on that record I like, but that's it. I don't like most of it. But it's, it's tricky. I like PJ Harvey. I don't know if her lyrics are, her last couple of records have been political. They're not really overtly like feminist political, but I think that's really hard to do that and make good music be, unless, actually, but rap music really is more conducive to that, I have to say, and I see it in more subtle ways, and actually, like there's no like standout. Yes.
So you're on the road now. What do you bring to express your creativity? Do you bring art supplies?
Oh, I'm not really on the road. I try not to be on the road, actually. Sorry. I don't know. And for that reason, because I find it like going on tour is that's so boring. Except for the 50 minutes you're on stage. Just everything leads up to that, and it's kind of a lot of waiting around, and it's kind of, you're always sort of exhausted. But it's really hard for me to do anything else when I'm actually on tour. Yes.
So for the writers in the audience, can you talk a little bit about how
I guess like a year and a half or something. And I wrote first the first chapter and the last chapter because I had to make a proposal, and that's what the editor suggested. And then I made a outline, and I don't know, I just kind of I tried to realize I don't really like to write about myself, so I tried to make it about other things, like a portrait of LA in the 60s, 70s, and New York in the 80s, you know, Northampton. And then I didn't, the most difficult part was trying to explain things, artists, or things about the art world, because I didn't want to be, it's a very weird, specific club almost, you know, it's very elite. You could say that word elitist, but it's just very, like any specialty field, you know, it's hard to, like if it was in science and I was a scientist, people would, of course, you know, not expect to understand certain terms or something, or people, but in the art world, it's like people demand different things, but I just, you know, I didn't know how much to explain or who would be interesting, who wouldn't, and that was the most difficult part, because I had a book of essays that I'd written that came out before this memoir, and I wish I could have just kind of put them together, you know, sold them together or somehow. It would have been easier, but that was the hardest part, and just also, I didn't want it to be a Sonic Youth book, but obviously it's such a big part of forming who I am and where I am now. So that was difficult to, I just decided to, you know, pick different songs and kind of build chapters around them. Yes?
You've expressed yourself through so many different mediums and so many different projects. When you start something, do you have a tendency just to see it through until the end, or do you ever have anything that you just get halfway through and you're just done?
I mean, usually I finish things. I mean, it's more like if I start doing some paintings that I don't actually have a show, but I just feel like I need to, you know, just try stuff out, or I'm curious to see how. And so it doesn't necessarily lead to anything, you know, but it's just kind of part of the process, I guess. Yes?
Is there any material that could eventually be released to complete the SYR series? And what's your personal favorite sound?
I'm sure there's probably stuff that could be dug up. There's somebody that sort of goes through, Steve spends a lot of time going through the archives and stuff. My favorite Sonic Youth record, I don't know. I mean, I like, I don't know if I have a favorite. I like Washing Machine just because it was sort of fun to record. And it was the first time we, aside from working on a soundtrack, it was the first time we went somewhere else to record. And Memphis was kind of exotic to us. So I don't know, I just have a lot of good feelings about that record. Yes? Yeah.
So on the song,
Well, it was my idea because my voice is pretty limited. I didn't think I could really sing that melody part, and I didn't want to, you know, I was trying to just stick with what more naturalistic singing, you know, as a non-singer. And I knew Kim, And I don't know, I just thought it would be fun. Yes. Oh.
Sorry.
Yes, in the back.
How do you feel, how have you changed as an artist since you were in your 20s, you say?
What's that?
How have you changed as an artist? How do you think you've changed as an artist?
As a visual artist or as a anyway person? I don't know. I guess I have more confidence, and I mean, when I first moved to New York, I was pretty intimidated by the art world, I have to say. And in a way, jumping into music was kind of a big escape from dealing with the art world. So I've kind of come back around. I realized at some point that I would really be disappointed in myself if I didn't actually pursue making art and put more as more of a main focus actually. So in a way that changed because I realized more stuff about myself that and when I was writing the book actually one of the reasons I wanted to write it to just figure out how I got to where I was in my life, and writing for me is a way of thinking and figuring out actually what I'm thinking or feeling. So it's a weird thing to just kind of, when you're writing about yourself, you have to really face up. Like I've spent a lot of time evading labels and kind of squirming away. So it really was, now I have to really, commit. And so that was probably, made me feel more confident actually afterwards. Yes.
I seen recently that maybe you and a group of people did maybe like a tribute for Yoko Ono at some kind of art gallery. And I was just wondering how it's like to work with her and what your connection with her. How is that?
Well, yes, it was at the Hirshhorn in DC, which is a museum there, and they had, it was kind of, I guess, the summer of Yoko, where they had some of her pieces on display, and I had, Thurston and I had actually done a record with her a few years ago, an improv record that her son Sean suggested. So, and she's great to work with. She, just goes in, does her thing, and she understands improv. Like there's some kind of performative nature of it in the studio, and anyway, so I feel, I was asked among Lizzie Bugatis and this other woman who I can't remember her name, if we would do some of her instructional pieces from her book Grapefruit, which are Fluxus-based pieces, and then to do something of our own that was kind of inspired by her. And she didn't end up coming because of ill health. I think anyway, but I kind of really wanted to go and do it because she is kind of getting up there. But it was, when I first met her, and it was one of those moments, like I never thought I would meet Yoko Ono, go to the Dakota. God, it was kind of surreal. Yes?
I find in myself different mediums of art influence one another. So like I can see something visual and it'll inspire or influence something musical in me, or like something musical can inspire like writing or like something fictional for me. So I was wondering to what extent and in what ways that happens for you.
I mean, overall, I guess there is a certain performative aspect to the painting I do, but it's my art practice is definitely more conceptual and thought out than what I'm doing now musically. And I don't know, for a long time I really just kind of kept them separate, and I mean I would get some ideas that were more conceptual and kind of bring them to the band or something, but for the most part it happens kind of accidentally if it overlaps. Yes.
After all those years in Sonic Youth, how was your experience?
It's not the worst. One year is better than the other. Yeah. Yes.
What art movement would you say you were most inspired from, when you were an early artist, visual artist?
Well, I was definitely inspired by Warhol and the sort of factory scene, but I was also actually, when it wasn't until I got out of art school that I really got into art history more and read T.J. Clark, Image of the People, and who's sort of a Marxist art historian, and it just kind of gave art a whole new kind of meaning to me, and I could actually see the lineage of where avant-garde and art started, and out of realism and the French Revolution. Those expressionists that dealt with that subject matter of everyday life and people, bringing it to the people, and so that, even though my art doesn't look like that, but I like Yves Klein and some Art Provera I really like, and surrealism, Yeah. Yes.
How often do you practice? Or when you were in Sonic Youth, how often did you guys practice?
Well, it depended. I mean, if we were starting to kind of, as you call, write a new record, we would start, just kind of meeting and sitting around and kind of, if someone had an idea, someone initiating something, and then jamming and arranging. And I know when our daughter was born, we kind of did everything around her school schedule when she started to school, and so we had a really odd kind of we'd go to New York on the weekends, because we moved out of New York, so everything was kind of bizarre, or we worked all summer long and all vacations and weekends, and we wouldn't really practice unless we had a show coming up. We'd practice, a couple times. Yes?
Why were the Carpenters so important to you?
Well, it's funny, they're one of those bands that, the time when they were playing, initially they were considered really conservative, and some of their songs sounded like bank jingles, and but taken out of that context, Karen's voice was beautiful, and soulful and kind of dark, and we rented a reel of their videos from Tower Video back in the day, and it was really bizarre. A lot of the videos were incredibly surreal and strange. Most of them were small films, and then I read her book, and I don't know, I just felt like there was something that was so, she was like an extreme version of kind of what happens to women and wanting to be perfect, and kind of, the only control she felt she had was over her body, and she really just kind of wanted to disappear, you know, I think. But I don't know, I just saw her as really iconic and as an iconic figure in America. And this whole idea of what success is supposed to be, and you know, nobody knew really what was going on. I find all that interesting. Same with the Beach Boys, like, what a perfect family. They're all singing music and playing music together. And then you read the book and you find out how abusive their father was, and you know, Brian went off on this adventure. You know, I don't know, I just find that the idea of what success is supposed to be in the American dream, and that idea of perfection is, I think it's really gotten battered, and I think it's good, in a sense, like, I don't know. Yes?
Yesterday you mentioned that there's some challenges artists face when they're making art related to their audiences, like it can be stifling, or they can go the other way.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
The question is, how do you relate to your audience when you're making art?
As a visual artist? I don't know, that's a really complicated question. You know, it depends on actually a lot the situation of the gallery, and where the gallery is located. So in a way, can be like kind of it's like a very general way, but it's still specific to context. Like I had a show with this gallery, my gallery in Chelsea a couple of years ago, and there were all these expensive luxury condominiums that have gone up there, and most of them are owned by people who don't live in New York. They're investments. So they're just like empty most of the time, and they're not giving anything to the community there as far as the art community, but there's a certain value in them for their location, and it's, you know, because they're around all these galleries. And I was doing I was doing word paintings. I had started out doing word paintings of names of noise bands, but I switched to, for the show I did names of condominiums. And then they were kind of, most of them were crumpled. Then they were crumpled and made into sculpture, they're resin. Anyway, so it was kind of relating to in a fake audience, actually. Fake audience, or make-believe audience of people buying those luxury condominiums. Anyway, I don't know, I had hedges too, plastic hedges that were placed around in the gallery. It's amazing, if you put a hedge in front of a painting, you feel like you're in the Museum of Modern Art or something. Yes?
Since you were such a groundbreaker as a woman in the music world, were your influences more female artists or male artists?
Some were, you know, both. Like, Darby Crash from the Germs was kind of amazing, singer. But, you know, the Slits and the Raincoats were definitely an inspiration. And to a certain extent, Patti Smith, Debbie Harry. They were also like women who'd started playing music when they were the same age I was, like 28, which is considered old. But, you know, it was also kind of growing up with, you know, listening to a lot of jazz music, actually, because my dad had a lot of jazz records, and So that was kind of, maybe that's what made me more open to no-wave music and dissonant music and things like that. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
So at school right now, we do different projects where we do whatever we want, but I'm choosing to start a band. And my favorite name of the project is to analyze what a band or relationship they want to sounds like. Would you say it's more casual or formal or?
Are you saying the relationship with band members to each other?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, I think bands are really special because a lot of times, you know, just, and this was really true of our band, like the music really came from our individual personalities and kind of sensibilities, and obviously some of that was shared sensibility, but you start doing things for certain reasons, and there's no logical reason why. It's like a family, you know, it's almost like a psychotic kind of family because people don't really communicate, you know, it's just kind of, you know, unless, you know, I don't know, it's weird, you know, and it's very difficult collaborating. But in a way, a good collaboration can take you to places where you wouldn't go on your own. That's why bands can be so great and special. I think that's all the time. Anyway, thanks to everyone for being here.